Welcome to Business Economics Session 5. Let's go ahead and start the class. So today we're talking about efficiency and equity. These are two topics that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so objectives of today. We want to define efficiency. We want to distinguish between value and price and define consumer surplus. We want to distinguish between cost, price, and define producer surplus. We want to explain the conditions under which markets move resources to their highest value uses and the resources of the inefficiency in our economy. Explain the main ideas about fairness and evaluate claims that markets result in unfair outcomes. So we want to discuss those today. So first of all, we want to talk about the idea of more for less. People are constantly striving to get more for less. Have you ever heard of that concept, of that idea of we'll give you more for less? Like, this is actually one of the taglines of Ross, which is one of the famous retail shops, dress for less. Dress more for less. So could we get more out of our scarce resources if we use them differently or in our use efficient? Are market outcomes fair outcomes? This chapter explains the conditions under which competitive markets achieve an efficient outcome. It describes the sources of inefficiency and it explores the concept of fairness. An efficient allocation of resources occurs when we produce the goods and services that people value most highly. So efficient allocation of resources occur when we produce goods and services that people value most. So this is really important to understand that we want to produce those goods and products that people value most. So we're not just going to produce any product. We want to produce those products that gives the most value to the customers. That's our goal. So resources are allocated efficiently when it's not possible to produce more of a good or service without giving up some other good or service that is valued more highly. Efficiency is based on value, which is determined by people's preferences. So this is important. This is important to understand that resources are allocated efficiently when there's no other possibility for you. I mean, you couldn't do better with regard to producing more of those goods or services and giving up without giving up some other good or service that is valued more highly. This goes back to the opportunity cost. If you remember the idea of opportunity cost, we discussed that before. We said whenever you're using an opportunity, whenever you're using a product or service, you're giving out your chance of using other substitutes or alternative options of that product or service. So whenever you go and buy an iMac, so you are buying an iMac, you're spending that over $1,000 on an iMac, and with the hope that all the other options that you have, like Samsung, Sony, Vario, I don't know, just name it, the Racer, all those other brand names you didn't use, and instead you decided to use an iMac, you are actually giving out the opportunity, your opportunity to use all of those options instead of this purchase you're making. So you got to make sure you're getting as much as you wouldn't get more value with the same amount of cost you incurring using other products. So efficiency is based on value. Don't forget that. We talk about value all the time. We're focusing on the value, not anything else. So, and it's determined by people's preferences. So the only measurement of value is people's preference. So if there's one thing you got to learn today is that the people's preferences is going to make the value of a product. Okay, now let's talk about marginal benefit. In the previous slide, we talked about efficient allocation. Now let's talk about marginal benefit. Marginal benefit is the benefit the person receives from consuming one more unit of a good or service. So the marginal benefit you get is when you add one more of that product or service, the benefit you get is called marginal benefit. So we can measure the marginal benefit from a good or service by the dollar value of other goods and services that the person is willing to give up to get more of that unit. So again, opportunity cost here too. By getting extra $1, how much benefit you get, we call marginal benefit compared to other products. These are refreshers. You know, we have discussed those before, so you just refreshing your mind before we start the topic today. As I told you before, the economics master, please mute your microphone. And economics works best when you master those basic concepts, because those will be the foundation of the new concepts. So every single session that we proceed, we are basing our new learning on the previous learning that we have. You're supposed to already have made. So the concept of decreasing marginal benefit implies that as more of a good or service is consumed, its marginal benefit decreases. This is important. We said that, we explained that with the example of a soda. We said the first soda you get, let's say you get 100 marginal benefit. The second soda would be 80, because the second soda will not give you as much satisfaction as the first one. And the third one would give you less satisfaction, even less than the second one. So, of course, your benefit is increasing when you have more of sodas. But as the number of sodas increases, that increase in your satisfaction decreases. And it gets to a point that extra sodas does not give you any satisfaction. Let's say you start drinking sodas. The first one is nice, the second one, the third one, the fourth, 5, 6, 7. Number 7, you are already fed up with the soda. You want to forget about soda. That's how the idea of free refills work here in the States, or a lot of countries that they give you free refills of sodas. When you go to McDonald's here or to Costco's food shop, you'll have the unlimited or free refill drink. So you get the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one you're already fed up, and next time you just take one. It's just a matter of that marginal benefit. So efficiency. So figure shows the decreasing marginal benefit from each additional slice of pizza measured in dollars. So as you can see on you have marginal cost and then the quantity. You have marginal cost is increasing and marginal benefit decreasing as the number of pizzas are actually increasing. Because you have the marginal cost. I mean, extra cost per extra slice of dollar you're incurring. But it gets to a point that marginal cost is not worth it for the marginal benefit you get. You get way less marginal benefit compared to marginal cost. So what is marginal cost? Marginal cost, the opportunity cost of producing one more unit of a good or service. The measure of marginal cost is the value of the best alternative foregone to obtain the last unit of the good. So we can measure the marginal cost of a good or service by the dollar value of all other goods and services that a person must give up to get one more unit of it. The concept of increasing marginal cost implies that as more of a good or service is produced, its marginal cost increases. So the concept of increasing marginal cost implies that as more of a good or service is produced, its marginal cost increases. So this figure shows the increasing marginal cost of each additional slice of pizza measured in dollars per price. So then efficiency and inefficiency. The marginal benefit from a good exceeds its marginal cost, producing and consuming more of the good resources more efficiently. So we are talking about marginal benefit. Marginal benefit exceeds marginal cost when you're efficiently using the goods and consuming more of that product gives you more marginal benefit. So if the marginal cost of a good exceeds its marginal benefit, producing and consuming less of the good uses resources more efficiently. So if you get to a point that the marginal cost exceeds the marginal benefit you get from the production of a certain product, then using less of that product is more beneficial to you. Are we clear so far? Everybody's following? Any questions? Okay. So let's just continue. If the marginal cost of a good equals its marginal benefit, resources are being used efficiently. So the time that the marginal cost and marginal benefit equal each other, that red dot you can see right there is where you're using your resources efficiently, because your marginal benefit and marginal cost equal each other. So now let's talk about value, price, and consumer surplus. So value is the willingness to pay. So the value of one more unit of a good or service is its marginal benefit, which we can measure as the maximum price that a person is willing to pay. So the value of one more unit of a good or service, is its marginal benefit. So we can measure as the maximum price that the person is willing to pay. So a demand curve for a good or service shows the quantity demanded at each price. So if you look at the demand curve, you get some good idea of for goods and services and understand how the quantity demanded at each certain price will differ. Then a demand curve also shows the maximum price that the consumers are willing to pay at each quantity. So these are just refreshments. This figure shows these two ways of interpreting a demand curve. So in a part shown here, the demand curve tells us that the quantity the consumers plan to buy at any given price. Let's say at the price of 15, the quantity is 10. So quantity of pizzas demanded at the price of $15 a pizza, like 10 pizzas. So you will see as we can move along, please mute your microphone also. As we move along the demand curve, you see at different prices, you have different quantities demanded. In part PB shown here, the demand curve tells us the maximum price that the consumers are willing to pay for a given quantity. This price measures the marginal benefit of the good at any given quantity. Okay. So what is the consumer surplus then? The consumer surplus is the value of a good minus the price paid for it, summed over the quantity bought. So one more time, the value of a good minus the price, and then summed over the quantity bought. So it is measured by the area under the demand curve and above the price paid up to the quantity bought. So figure on the next slide shows the consumer surplus for the pizza. Looky here. So the consumer surplus is the price paid, is the market price, which is the same for each unit bought. The quantity bought is determined by the demand curve and the blue rectangle at the bottom that shows the amount paid for pizza. So the green triangle shows the consumer surplus from pizzas. So the amount paid is the blue one, and the market price is that red line, and the part above that red line is the surplus. The green is where it says consumer surplus. It's green. It's at the top, on the top of the blue. Can you see that? You have a blue rectangle. Then on top of that, you have a green triangle. Can you see that? Yeah, it's kind of green. Yeah. So that's what is meant by consumer surplus. So the consumer surplus on the 10 slides is $2. if you look at that on the 10th slide, there are $2 surplus that the consumer is willing to pay minus the $1.50 that she does pay, which is 50 cents a slide. So you deduct 2 minus 150, you're left with 50 cents. So cost, minimum supply price, and supply. The cost of one more unit of a good or service is its marginal cost, which we can measure as the minimum price that a firm is willing to accept. So the cost on the other side is the minimum that the firm is willing to accept. The supply curve of a good or service shows the quantity supplied at each price. The supply curve also shows the minimum price that producers are willing to accept at each quantity. So when you go to the supply curve, then it's the minimum that the supplier is willing to accept. The supply curve tells us the quantity that producers plan to sell at a given price. So cost, price, and producer surplus. In part B shown here, supply curve shows us the minimum price that the producers are willing to accept for any given quantity. So the price measures the marginal cost of producing a given quantity of a good. Okay, I was trying to find that, I wanted to show you a video. I just can't find it, so. Okay. Yes, Mr. Miyako, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir, and dear classmates. Sir, looking at the graph here, I understood that if the quantities of the products of the supplies goes up, as it's shown here, the pizzas, the minimum price, supply price, also will go up. Am I right, sir? With this?
Yes, you're right. So as the quantity goes up, it's like just a matter of number of quantities and multiplied by prices. So let's say it's $5 each. Let's say for each 5 pizzas you pay $10. It's like almost there $2 each. So 10. I mean, but the increase in the number of prices is less. Let's say from 5 to 10, the increase in price is a lot, but from 10 to 15, the price is less. If you see, there is a increasing the prices will reduce, but there's a still increase in price overall when you get more quantities. But that's the minimum price that the supplier is going to accept for the purchase. So does that help, Mr. Miyako?
Yeah, if you can please explain a little bit. I was a little bit confused with this, sir.
Yes.
The definition a little bit more because I was confused. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely, sure. So let's just suppose you're buying one pizza. If one pizza is $2, you're paying $2 for pizza, and then for 2 pizzas, then you have to pay $4. So as the quantity increases, like as the number of pizzas increases, of course the prices is going to increase also. So supply chain tells us the minimum price that the producers are willing to accept. So this means that for a supplier to accept to deliver or to give you pizzas, it will just require minimum of $2. So if I'm a customer and I'm giving $1.50, the supplier is not going to give me any pizza until I minimum give him $2. Then they will give me a pizza. So that's the supplier. And if I have more pizzas, then they'll give me, I mean, it's going to cost me more as the prices sums up. And then the concept was that the increase in prices just goes on and on. The demand also has definite influence on the price and the supply curve as well. When the demand goes up, if you remember, it will make the price goes up and the supply also goes up. And then they will get back to equilibrium, because when the demand goes up, the prices goes up, but then the supply also increases and then brings the prices down. So it's kind of they balance each other at points of time. So producer surplus is the price of a good minus the marginal cost of producing it, summed over the quantity sold. So producer surplus is measured by the area below the price and above the supply curve up to the quantity sold. So the figure in the next slide shows the surplus of the suppliers. So if you can see the marginal cost and the pink side, the price is the market price, right? The yellow, the red one, and then which is the same for each unit sold. The quantity sold is determined by the supply curve and the red area. So as you can see, the quantity sold is determined by the supply curve, and the red area shows the total cost of producing pizzas. So the blue triangle, though, shows the producer's surplus from pizzas. So if you look at the producer's surplus, those are the pizzas that were not sold. They are extra left produced by the suppliers. Because their price was higher, you know. So it's like, look at the marginal cost, because that's where it shows exactly what's going to happen. At $5, the suppliers are going to give 0 pizzas. At $10, they're willing to give you 50 pizzas. At $15, they're willing to give you 100 pizzas. So as you can see, those blue part, the triangle on top of it, though, because there are extra pizzas available that they are not willing to give out because the price is not good enough yet. Mr. Miyako, does not mean that as it goes to the market price, the surplus, I mean, yes, the surplus decreases as it goes to the market price, for sure, yes. And then when it increases, then it will go to the deficit or shortage, because then you have more demand than you have pizzas. But that blue can continue, you know. So the producer's surplus on 50th pizza is $15 that the producers receive minus the $10 that it costs to produce, which is $5 a pizza. So then we have efficiency of the competitive market. Is the extra produced? Yes, you got it right. That's absolutely correct. Okay. I'm just trying to find that video for you guys. For some reason, I cannot find it. And okay. So let's just continue. Of efficiency of competitive equilibrium. The figure shows that a competitive market creates an efficient allocation of resources at equilibrium. So basically, equilibrium is where these two meet each other. So competitive markets create efficient allocation, so there's not extra, the supply and demand, they're actually meeting each other. The quantity demanded equals the quantity supply. And then the equilibrium quantity at that point, marginal benefit equals marginal cost. So the quantity is the efficient quantity. So the sum of consumers and producer surplus is maximized at the efficient level of output. So you see, we have the producer, we have the producer surplus and consumer surplus at before the equilibrium price. So the invisible hand, Adam Smith, though, believes that the invisible hand is the idea in wealth of nations, implies that the competitive markets send resources to their highest value use in a society. Consumers and producers pursue their own self-interest and interact in markets. So basically, according to Adam Smith, the wealthy of nations, in his book of Wealth of Nations, the invisible hand is in action, and it sort of sends resources to the highest value use. So consumers and producers pursue their own self-interest and interact in markets. Market transactions generate an efficient, highest value use of resources. Okay. Okay, so let me just show you this video on Adam Smith. I finally found one of those that I wanted to show you. Let me just go ahead and show you from here.
Adam Smith is very rarely read. He's worshipped, but not read. And so, for example, everyone's heard of the phrase invisible hand, but almost no one knows how he used it. The term invisible hand actually does appear in his classic Wealth of Nations once. It appears in an argument against what's now called neoliberalism. What's now called neoclassical economics that we're supposed to worship. So we're supposed to worship Adam Smith and neoclassical economics, and they radically differ on the notion of invisible hand. Adam Smith was concerned, as David Ricardo later was, that if there was free movement of capital and free import of goods, he was concerned about England. He said England will suffer because British capitalists will invest abroad and they'll import from abroad, and that'll harm the English economy. Ricardo had similar concerns. And Adam Smith then gave an argument, not a very good argument, but his argument was that English investors will prefer to invest in England because of what some call the home bias. They'll have a preference for investing close by, and therefore, as if by an invisible hand, England will be saved from the menace of free capital movement and the free imports. That's invisible hand. What's that got to do with the Cato Institute or the modern enthusiasm about free capital flow and having the U.S. corporations invest in China so they can send stuff back here to sell cheap, exploiting Chinese workers? That's not Adam Smith. And it goes right across the board. I mean, everyone who went to college learned the first paragraph of Wealth of Nations, in which he talks about how wonderful division of labor is, allows for all kind of efficiency and productivity and so on. Not very many people got to page, whatever it is, page 400, in which he points out that division of labor is monstrous because it turns people into creatures as stupid and ignorant as a person can possibly be. A person just becomes a machine, and that's a terrible attack on fundamental human rights. And therefore, he says, in any civilized society, the government's going to have to intervene to prevent division of labor. How many people get that far? In fact, Smith does give arguments for markets, rather nuanced arguments. They just take what they call trade. The so-called conservatives are very excited that trade is increasing. So, for example, NAFTA is supposed to be a great triumph of conservatism. It increased trade between Mexico and the United States. Well, it is true that cross-border interactions between Mexico and the United States increased. But would Adam Smith or any classical liberal or traditional conservative have called that trade? I mean, suppose General Motors assembles parts in Indiana and sends them to Illinois for assembly and then to New York to sell. Is that trade? Well, suppose it happens across the Mexican border, but it's still internal to a huge command economy. Is that trade? Well, it turns out that if you look at the rough figures, which are all that we have, before and after, the part of cross-border interactions between Mexico and the U.S. that was internal to a corporation was about 50%, and now it's about 2/3. That's no more trade than if the Kremlin produced things in Leningrad and sent them to Ukraine for assembly and to Poland to sell. That's just operations internal to command economies. We just simply, in the talk about trade or free trade or entrepreneurial values or consumer choice or democratic functioning and so on, is putting us in a world of illusion and fantasy. That's why these terms are all demeaned, not just conservative.
Okay, so that was a kind of a controversial speak of Noam Chomsky on Adam Smith. So Noam Chomsky is known for his very controversial thoughts and a lot of concepts. So that was a different. I just wanted you guys to see a different perspective of Adam Smith, views. And so let's move on. So the invisible hand at work today. So the invisible hand works in our economy today. It coordinates the self-interest of producers and consumers of computers, oranges, and just about every good or service that you can think of. So cartoon on page 109 shows how the invisible hand sometimes work in surprising ways. Then obstacles to efficiency. Markets are not always efficient, and I mean that cartoon is on your book. If you look at your book, you will see that. Obstacles to efficiency. Markets are not always efficient, and the obstacles to efficiency are price ceilings and floors for price. And here's the link to Noam Chomsky's speech. So taxes, subsidies, and quotas, and monopoly, public goods, and external costs and external benefits. You're very welcome. So all these are obstacles to a competitive market. So underproduction and overproduction. Obstacles to efficiency lead to underproduction or overproduction and create a deadweight loss, a decrease in consumer and producer surplus. So look at here. So the figure A shows the effects of underproduction. So when the market is underproducing, the efficient quantity is 10,000 pizzas a day. You see that red dot that the supply and demand meet each other? But if production is restricted to 5,000 pizzas a day, then a deadweight loss arises. So when the market and the production is not able to produce that extra 5,000 because the market is demanding it, and it's for any reason, it could be for lack of resources, lack of cheese and pepperonis, or whatever is causing it. If the market is not able to produce the exact amount that is required by the demand, then we have a deadweight loss. So figure B, though, shows overproduction. When the market is producing over that is needed, then you have overproduction, which is the opposite of underproduction loss. Ideas about fairness can be divided into two. It's not fair if the result isn't fair, or it's not fair if the rules aren't fair. So this is important. When we talk about market fairness, because this is a very important hot topic today, about fairness of the market. So can we say that the market isn't fair because the rules aren't fair, or can we not say that? I mean, that's important to understand. If the market is fair just because the result is fair, or it's not fair because the rule is fair or is not fair. So that's very important. Okay. So then again, I'm going to show you a movie. Let me just go to this next slide and then show you a movie, a video clip. So it's not fair if the result isn't fair. So the idea that it's not fair if the result isn't fair began with utilitarianism, which the principle that states that you should strive to achieve the greatest happiness for the greatest number. So if everyone gets the same marginal utility for a given amount of income, and if the marginal benefit of income decreases as income increases, taking $1 from a richer person, giving it to a poor person increases the total benefit. Only when income is equally distributed has the greatest happiness been achieved. So this is a utilitarian approach. Is the market fair? So the figure shows how redistribution increases efficiently. Tom is poor and has a high marginal benefit of income. Jerry is rich and has a low marginal benefit of income. Taking $1 from Jerry and giving him to Tom until they have equal income increases total benefit, according to utilitarian approach. But utilitarianism ignores the cost of making income transfers. Recognizing these costs leads to big trade-off between efficiency and fairness. Because for you to be fair, then you forget about efficiency. And because of the big trade-off, John Rawls proposed that income should be redistributed at a point at which the poorest person is as well off as possible. So it's not fair if the rules aren't fair, is the symmetry principle. So it's not fair if the rules are fair, it's the symmetry principle, which is a requirement that people in similar situations be treated similarly. So in economics, this principle means equality of opportunity, not equality of income. Robert Nozick suggested that fairness is based on two rules. The state must create and enforce laws that establish and protect private property, and private property may be transferred from one person to another only by voluntary exchange. You cannot force people to take $1 from one guy and give it to another. It's not fair. So this is the end of this chapter. I'm going to show you this this clip. Part of it. So it's very useful. We'll not watch it completely, but just to a certain extent, because I think it's a good one and it's going to help us to understand some of the concepts.
A free market needs rules of the game, or it couldn't operate. But those regulations should be clear. They should be performance and outcome-based. We don't need what we have now. We have constant churning of regulations. The rules of the game are just constantly changing. Every year, there are 3,000 to 4,000 new regulations issued. It's hundreds of thousands of pages in the Federal Register. I think there are close to 300,000 regulators writing and enforcing those regulations. Can you imagine a game, like a baseball game? Can you imagine how baseball would be played if the rules of the game were constantly changing like that? Instead of baseball players trying to be better at the game, the objectives would be to get the rules changed that suited them, so that somebody my size might say, if you hit the ball out of the park, it doesn't count. We could never have a baseball game where the rules are changing that quickly, and that's what's happening in Washington. In the last decade alone, we've seen a 20% increase in the Code of Federal Regulations. That's the number of pages in the Code of laws that we have to comply with. That just means that our resources are spent influencing those regulations, influencing how they're written, influencing how they're enforced, instead of spent creating and innovating products that meet society's demands. And that's what leads to crony capitalism, the rent seeking, rather than playing the game.
Okay, so this was part of the speech. So let me just stop. So as you can see here, there are different perspectives and different approaches to fairness of the market. So when even in the U.S. economy, where it's a pretty free economy, you'll see even just minor influences of the government is taken really harshly, and people don't like that. Because the fairness of the economy, the concept of the market fairness, is pretty important. Yeah, rules are changing so fast, but keep that in mind that you want to set the rules that is similar and same for everyone, and not just trying to treat people the same. People should be treated the same in same situations. They should not have same exact incomes, but they should have same opportunities. You see, so that's the concept of market fairness. So let's have a task for you guys. The task would be, what is a fair market? And I'll take it back to this slide. If the result is fair or rules are fair, and please explain why. Okay, so I want you guys to explain your thinking of what is a fair market. If the rules are fair or results are fair, and you explain why you think so. So please take a moment and think about it. We're going to discuss about it right now. So if the result is fair, then there's no competition, no wish to advance the technology or any industry. We give example because work is done more, and if you try less, you get the same. So for more, it looks more like communism. On the contrary, if the rules are fair, it's sure that people get the same opportunity. So fair rules pave the way for fair competition. Yep, that's a very good explanation, Mr. Miyako. That's a good one, and I'm yet to receive others' comments also. So on the same token and on the same concept, I want to show you this video that explains these two in more detail. So let's just watch this video. And for others, please work on your answers, and we'll watch this video together.
A nation organizes, manages, controls the factors of production so that wealth or materials that get produced within the nation are somehow distributed to members of that population. Now, the method that gets used to manage these factors of production and to determine who gets what is really what defines different economic systems. So two ends of the spectrum. You can think about command economies versus a market economy. Now, a command economy is an economic system where the government manages all, or in some cases, most, of the resources within the nation and oversees the types of industries that are going to operate. In a market economy, government is not involved. The resources within that nation get distributed, shared within this society based on this notion of supply and demand. So command economies, let's look a bit closer. Two types. First type is communism. Under communism, the government owns all of the factors of production and makes all the decisions on how resources within that nation will be used. Socialism could be thought of as a watered-down version of communism in many ways. Government controls the critical industries, but it does allow individual freedom, some individual right to own property, to start up small businesses that the government doesn't consider to be critical to the overall economy. Communism. How does it work? Well, we could think about this idea of an entrepreneur coming up with an idea, in our case, opening up a coffee shop, purchasing some land and getting a business up and running. Well, in communism, that wouldn't happen. Why? Government controls all of the factors of production, makes all the decisions about which industries are going to operate. So government would determine how the factors of production get utilized. So who gets capital? How does that capital get used to build certain industries? Government under communism owns all the resources and makes decisions that hopefully are going to benefit the most people within society. No individual ownership. It's about what's good for all of society, not necessarily what's good for the individual. So an example, suppose it's middle of winter and you've got a tree out in your backyard and you need firewood. So you go out back, you decide to chop up the tree and have some firewood for your home. Under communism, that would be considered illegal. It's not your tree to chop down, it's the tree of the people. You just happen to be living in that house, which, by the way, also is owned by the people. Under communism, the government would determine how many farmers there needs to be, how many employees are needed to go work in a factory, who's going to be a teacher. Everyone needs to go to school, so government's going to oversee and provide all of that too. So government's controlling one of the factors of production called labor. what happens to the output once industry has made the product it needs to make, once all the farmers have grown their food, the students have been educated, and so forth? Well, suppose those boxes on the screen are representative of the output of the economic system. Under communism, every member in society would be entitled to an equal share of what was produced within that economic system over the course of a year or a specific period of time. Everyone gets the same amount. The second example of a command economy is socialism. Remember, socialism, the government controls critical industries, but individuals are allowed to run non-critical businesses. So in our case, government has determined that a certain factory will get built, making a product that people need. We provide jobs to citizens. Effectively, they are employees of the government. An employee gets hired to be a teacher. A certain number of people get hired to work on the farm. One individual decides they don't want to do that. They've got a musical talent, and they choose to use that talent to earn a living. So what happens in socialism is the members of society get an equal share of what society produced. However, individuals who do choose to pursue businesses that are considered to be non-critical to the overall economic system are welcome to pursue their musical talent or pursue this other type of smaller businesses and sell their talent to the rest of the population. A market economy. Market economies are the other end of the spectrum. In a market economy, government is not involved. The market is the mechanism of the exchange of goods and services, and resources are distributed by this concept of supply and demand. There's private ownership of everything. So, in our case, the entrepreneur has an idea. They want to get a coffee shop up and running. They need to be able to access capital, they need to be able to access labor, they need to be able to access natural resources. And everything has a price. As long as the entrepreneur is able to raise the capital in order to borrow money, pay the interest back, hire the labor to do the work, purchase the natural resources required to build the coffee shop and to keep it running, you're more than welcome to do that. In a market economy, it's all about private ownership. You have a tree in your backyard, you decide you want to go out and chop the tree down for firewood, you're more than welcome to do that. In fact, you're more than welcome to chop all the trees down on your property and do whatever you want to do with it. In the market economy, there's a price for everything. Now suppose the farmer wants to send his daughter to school to get an education. Well, there's a price for that education. How is he going to afford to do this? Well, he produces his product. So in our case, the farmer produces milk. It's got a price. The farmer takes the milk to market, tries to make it available for sale, see who would be willing to buy it. Everyone's got freedom. Some people are going to say no. Some people are going to say yes. The farmer's daughter gets to go to school. Now, why would the farmer want to send his daughter to school in the first place? What is the point of education in a market economy? Opportunity. Education will create an individual that has more skills, more knowledge, all the credentials that an employer are looking for. They're then more likely to command a higher wage and generate more money in the long run so that they can in turn purchase more goods. Versus the individual who didn't get education. How is the output in a market economy allocated in society? Those who produce, those who add value, those who have skills in short supply get the benefits of what the market economy has produced. Those who are unable to work, those who lack the education, don't benefit as much under a market economy. This produces the haves and the have-nots. Now, advantages of communism versus market economies. In communism, the wealth of the nation, what's been produced within that economic system, is shared equally amongst all members of society. Now, in market economies, the advantage, we get what we deserve. This notion of a student who studied very, very hard for an exam versus the student who didn't study at all and barely attended class. Disadvantages of communism and market economies. Under communism, everyone gets the same, regardless of how much they contributed, regardless of how hard they worked, regardless of how smart they are. It's all about quality. So in this case, the student who didn't do any work got a B, but so did the student who worked very hard. It's little motivation. In market economies, big downside is potential for greed and all the negative things that can happen along with that greed. Is there a way to blend the best parts of each of these systems? This is called a mixed economy. In a mixed economy, it is an economic system that features characteristics of both command and market economies. What's interesting is most of the economies in the world are in fact mixed economic systems. They have elements of the market economy, but they also have elements of command economy where government gets involved. This even includes the United States and Canada, two economic systems that we tend to view as being very capitalistic. Canada has a mixed economy. In what ways is Canada's economy like a command economy? Well, government manages and regulates the businesses. The whole variety of rules and regulations and laws that various levels of government within Canada impose upon business. It keeps our water clean. It prevents people from going out and chopping down all the trees and ruining wildlife habitat, and ensures that products that we purchase are safe. So all these rules are imposed by government in order to look after the best interests of all of society. Government is also a provider of essential services in Canada and in any mixed economic system. Government builds roads, provides the police force, hospital, prints the money. Can you imagine a private corporation in charge of printing the nation's money? Now, in what ways is Canada's economy like a market economy? Well, if mom and dad have enough money to send the student to school, and they work hard, and they get a good education, hopefully they get a job that allows them to make more money. They can buy a fancier car than those who haven't worked as hard, who haven't been fortunate enough to go to school. And they can live in and purchase nicer homes. People who are unable to go to school for a variety of reasons, people who don't work hard, may not get a job that they like. May not be able to afford fancy cars. They may not have comfortable or luxurious living conditions. So to review, we could view economic systems as being two ends of a spectrum. So the high government control end of the spectrum, command economies. Two examples, communism and socialism. Opposite end of the spectrum, where it's low government control, the market economy. Somewhere in the middle, a mixed economy.
Okay. So, that was a very good explanation of what we discussed today. So let's see what we have from others. We just have Mr. Miyako's example. Who wants to explain his example also? Do you have any comments or questions for today? Any questions before we end the class? Any comments or questions? Thank you. Any questions? Okay, so basically the whole concept was geared through marginal cost, marginal benefit, how the market gets to equilibrium, and how the market is efficient, how it's all the resources are efficiently allocated, where the marginal cost and marginal benefit are the same, and demand curve and supply curve are at equilibrium. They learn about surplus of supply, surplus of demand, and we learn about basically loss, weighted loss, where you're not able to produce as much as the market demands us to. And then we talked about the invisible hand of Adam Smith, that the market pushes towards the equilibrium and efficient use of resources. We watched some videos, some controversial videos on Adam Smith that not necessarily everybody agrees with the usage of Adam Smith's basically invisible hand in economics. And then we saw the fairness of the market. We tested and learned about the fairness of the market, whether if the rules are fair, the market would be considered fair, or when the results are fair. So in a free market, we know that the answer would be rules should be fair, not the result, because we cannot take like income from other members of the economy and give it to others. It should be voluntarily, and basically the trade-off is much worse than the result that we get. So utilitarian approach is not necessarily the best approach, even though it was practiced by many governments and is still partially practiced by a lot of governments in the world. But nowadays, countries, especially free countries, are moving towards free market, where basically the market itself adjusts itself. So that's how we conclude the session today. Don't forget to send me the tasks. Those of you who didn't answer today, send it to me by email next day. And if there's no questions, we can end the class. Any questions or comments? Okay, so thanks everyone. Have a nice week, and I'll see you next week.